Okay, in this video, we're just going to go over what it means to have an inspection contingency and how that will look like when you are asking for repairs or perhaps a credit. So when you first make your offer, you're going to include most likely this addendum, which is an inspection addendum to the purchase and sale agreement. And basically what this addendum says is that at the buyer's expense, we'll pay for an inspection. If you would like to do a sewer inspection, you may do that also. Talks about that right here. This is a great idea if the sewer line is by any big trees. We want to make sure that there's no cracks in the sewer line. So depending on how old the home is too, this is something that we can talk about. Buyer's obligation, just again, that you're paying for the inspection. Buyer's notice. So basically, if this is not filled in differently, it gives you 10 days to complete the inspection, although a lot of times this will get shortened up to 5 days or something like that. The buyer shall not provide the inspection report or portions of the report to the seller unless they request otherwise. So that just means that we're not going to be sending any part of the report. It's actually a significant fine to do that. So we'll just keep that to ourselves unless they ask for it in writing, and then we can send them the portions that coincide with what we're asking for. So the seller has to consent here as well if they would like to receive a copy. Additional time for inspections. So basically these next few paragraphs will talk about if, for example, the roof is questionable, the inspector could say they recommend having a roofer come out to address and see what types of issues there might be. So if this isn't filled in, it defaults to 5 days for additional inspections. And then the seller has an additional 3 days to decide how they want to respond to that. And then the buyer has another additional 3 days. So I always like to remind both buyers and sellers, we want to work in the best interest of the transaction, which is time is of the essence. So we don't want to drag this out if we don't need to, because as you can see, all of those days will start to add up. If the seller agrees to do repairs, they need to do that within 3 days prior to the closing date. And as a buyer, you are more than welcome to ask for any types of receipts. You can also go and re-inspect. If you're doing an on-site sewage, which would be a septic inspection, there'll be a separate form for that, and that is the responsibility of the seller. Neighborhood review contingency. So if you check this box, it's just that the inspection includes satisfaction of the conditions of the neighborhood in which the property is located. So it coincides with the neighborhood review. So after the inspection's been completed and the offer's been accepted, you're going to send, or I'm going to send this form, and we're going to decide how to best fill this out, but it's an inspection response. So this would be, there's a couple different options. So there's a few check boxes here. So buyer's inspection of the property is approved and inspection contingency is satisfied. The buyer's inspection of the property is disapproved and the agreement is terminated. The earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer. So this is just like there's too many issues. We don't want to even ask for anything. We're running scared. So number 3 is buyer gives notice of an additional inspection. So as I mentioned earlier about that roof issue, if you want to have another, contractor come out, this is the box we would check for that. And it gives you those additional days to get that inspection done. Or we could do the last box, which buyer requests the following modifications and/or repairs. If the seller agrees these modifications, the inspection contingencies shall be deemed satisfied. So there's a couple different options here, and then the seller gets to respond how they would like to handle this. So they can either agree to modifications, they offer to only correct the following conditions, they just reject your proposal altogether, or they reject the proposal but propose the following alternative modifications. So they have a couple different options. And then down here, you have some options as well on how you want to, do you want to accept what the seller is saying? Do you want to reject the seller's response? So it kind of just, this is hopefully the last piece of the negotiation, but we need to get to some resolve for this form as well. So if you have any specific questions about how these inspections work or inspection responses, please feel free to reach out to me. Happy to explain in further detail.